Hello friends, and welcome to the channel, where we delve into the mind of a villain. In this entry, we'll be taking a look at Chiffre, the criminal private banker from the Bond film Casino Royale. A sinister character who proved to be a challenging antagonist, Chiffre was a welcome addition to the franchise in its pendulum swing to a more realistic take, in its departure from the stereotypical over-the-top Bond villain that came to plague the previous era. In this video, we'll be taking a look at his characteristics and beliefs, as well as the attitudes one can glean from his actions. The name Chiffre is French for the cipher, with his real name being unknown. As a banker for the world's warlords and freedom fighters, Chiffre was ultimately his own worst enemy, with his greed and overconfidence being the prime catalyst for his downfall. After irresponsibly risking his client's money, he is caught between a rock and a hard place, with his only way out being a high-stakes poker game where he is pitted against MI6 agent Bond. One of the immediately striking things about Chiffre is his character presence. From the moment he steps out of the car at the start of the film, one senses the introduction of evil, simply just from the sight of his presence alone without any word. Chiffre exemplifies the notion of less is more. Much of the mystique and aura of Chiffre comes from how quiet and emotionally stable he appears to be, while inside he is desperately scrambling for a way out. Dressed in a monochromatic black suit, his hair in a slick comeback, he was mostly stoic and reserved, with a constant piercing stare that exudes evil intent. The figurative cherry on top for his sinister appearance comes from his scarred left eye, giving him the distinguishing trait of weeping blood. Chiffre's outlook on life is quickly revealed early in the film. When the Ugandan warlord asks him if he believes in God, without any hesitation, Chiffre says no, and that he instead believes in a reasonable rate of return. While this could be taken as his attempt to keep the conversation on track, perhaps it points to Chiffre's material outlook on life. His actions in the film point to a need for financial gain, despite how nefarious the methods may be. In M's exposition of his previous dealings, she mentions that Chiffre previously made huge profits from shorting airline stock around the events of 9/11. Now he seeks to replicate that success by shorting Skyfleet stock with his client's money. This irresponsible and risky act points to another trait of Chiffre's, his ego and his sense of satisfaction from proving he can beat the perceived odds, whether in the stock market or in the casino. M describes him as a chess prodigy and a mathematical genius who likes to flaunt it by playing poker. Judging by the multiple instances where he gloats over his win at the poker table, that statement on his arrogance certainly rings true. It's reasonable to assume that a man with his knowledge would be able to make money from other financial instruments, perhaps even legally if he wanted to. Instead, he chooses to bet against the market and later rig events to sway it in his favor. It's likely that if his plan had succeeded, Chiffre would have reveled in proving all the other investors wrong as he cashes in on another payday. The film requires some suspension of disbelief, as in real life someone like Chiffre would not purchase put options that were set to expire the day after his rigged event. But in the context of the film, it's certainly an efficient get-rich-overnight scheme, with him earning hundreds of millions should he be successful. However, despite his profitable scheme, it should be pointed out that Chiffre is putting all his eggs in one basket, so to speak. Using all his clients' money on only one type of stock is the exact opposite of diversifying risk, a concept that someone of his financial stature should be well versed in. Perhaps it speaks to his overconfidence that his plan would succeed, but it's certainly a presumptuous conclusion, and Chiffre should know better, as he himself was aware that MI6 was onto his operation when Bond attacked his hired man at the embassy. Despite knowing his plan was somewhat compromised, he still proceeds with it. But where Le Chiffre falters again is that he only sent one man, without preparing for any contingencies or backup despite the surveillance from MI6. With Bond being the superior combatant, the inevitable result is the thwarting of his plan. Having lost all his client's money, Le Chiffre has to resort to winning it back at Casino Royale. His cold demeanor, as well as his shallow relationship with his girlfriend, is seen by his apathy when the warlord threatens to cut off her arm, but stops before commenting on his lack of protest. Surprisingly, Le Chiffre receives no apparent backlash from his girlfriend for this. Perhaps it could be that if the roles were reversed, she herself would have no qualms in watching Le Chiffre suffer the same punishment. Early in the game, we see his craftiness and his penchant for deception. In one of the first few rounds, Bond deliberately loses to Le Chiffre to uncover his tell, or in layman's terms, his indication that he has been bluffing. For Le Chiffre, his tell appears to be the involuntary twitching of his scarred eye. But as it turns out, the so-called tell was a fake, meant to deceive Bond into thinking he was bluffing so that Bond would raise more money to call his bluff in the later rounds. There is some divisiveness over this part of the film, suggesting that Le Chiffre's tell was indeed genuine, and that Vesper must have leaked it to him so that he could trick Bond. While this point of view sounds reasonable, this theory can be refuted. We know for certain from the next installment that Mathis was innocent, so that leaves the possibility of Vesper. From the ending of Casino Royale, we learn that Vesper betrays Bond to save her lover. It would seem that she was in cahoots with Le Chiffre all along, with her leaking information to Le Chiffre and staging a fake kidnapping to force the password out of Bond. But more likely, Vesper has no allegiance to Le Chiffre for the following reasons. Firstly, she made a deal with Mr. White to spare Bond, who then proceeds to finish off Le Chiffre. Secondly, when Le Chiffre poisons Bond to remove him from the game, it was Vesper who saved him. In light of these, it can be concluded that neither Vesper nor Mathis told Le Chiffre that Bond had caught on to his tell. Therefore, it speaks to the craftiness of Le Chiffre's mind that his bluff was a bluff, that he was able to fool Bond, who himself is an expert poker player. But while Le Chiffre does not have a tell in the game of poker, he has a visible sign of stress, the uncontrollable bleeding of his eye, which happens involuntarily when he is perplexed. We see this on two separate occasions, when he discovers that the Ugandan warlord has been killed, and when Bond unveils his winning hand of a straight flush. As the game progresses, Le Chiffre realizes that Bond poses more of a challenge than expected. Just like with the stock market, he resorts to underhanded means, but once again he does a substandard job, underestimating Bond's ability to survive. With Bond weakened from the poison, he could have simply assigned someone to finish him off, ensuring that Bond would never return to the table. Poisoning Bond but then leaving him to himself was a missed opportunity to tie up another loose end. Despite the insurmountable stress on Le Chiffre, his ability to remain calm throughout is remarkable. This likely stems from him knowing that he has a figurative safety net in the form of MI6 offering him witness protection, as seen when he refutes Bond's claim that he will die after relieving him of jock itch. At the end, Le Chiffre was a villain who caused his own demise, one whose greed caused discontent with the already luxurious state of his life, one who took unnecessary risk for superfluous financial gain, one whose overconfidence caused him to overlook the finer details that could have made his plan succeed. So what do you think of Le Chiffre, folks? Where would you rank him in terms of other Bond villains? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and take care.